controversy surrounding birth control in this country has prompted strong reaction across the political and religious spectrum. Now a high-profile celebrity attorney says radio host Rush Limbaugh should face criminal charges for his verbal assault on Georgetown University student Sandra Fluck. Fluck is an advocate for reproductive rights. Brittany Hood has the story.
Rush Limbaugh is in hot water again over his statements about Georgetown law student Sandra Fluck. Celebrity attorney Gloria Allred wants Limbaugh arrested and prosecuted. Limbaugh broadcasts his program from Florida, and a law there makes it a crime to say false statements about a woman's sexual conduct. In a letter to the Attorney General, Allred wrote, Mr. Limbaugh has acknowledged that his reference to Ms. Fluck as a slut and prostitute were baseless and false. The Florida statute directly applies to the conduct Mr. Limbaugh admits to engaging in. But at least one expert says Fluck may have her own civil case against Limbaugh for defamation.
She's a student at a Jesuit university. There was harm. There was the perfect opportunity to say, you know what, that was wrong, that was misogynist, but many people sort of embraced it. So for many people, she is in fact a slut. She is in fact a whoremonger. She is in fact a woman who would throw her legs over because those like-minded people. Now I would imagine that some of those types of people attend Georgetown University, that they would look at her in unfavorable light because there's a segment of the population that buys into that. And if they didn't buy into it, it wouldn't be said.
D.C. resident Regina Lewis says that birth control protects innocent children from being born into poverty or into families that cannot provide for them.
What Rush Limbaugh said was unacceptable. To have her stand up for birth control and the use of it and protecting the rights of it by saying something like that it's ridiculous. As a man, he can't understand the impact that birth control can have, and as a woman, it's protecting the lives of a lot of people, including myself.
45 sponsors have canceled their support for the Limbaugh Show. So far, the Attorney General's office has made no statement and taken no action in response to Allred's plea. For District Docket, this is Brittany Hood.
And for a closer look at the implications of this matter, District Docket's Yasmin El-Sabawi is live in the studio with more analysis. Yasmin?
Thanks, Maria. I'm here with Craig Miller, co-founder of Simeone & Miller, who practices in D.C., Virginia, and Maryland. Thanks, Craig, for joining us.
You're welcome.
So let's take a look at the Florida statute here. It stems from 1883. We're going to bring the graphic up. And it states that defamation, whoever speaks of and concerning any woman, married or unmarried, falsely and maliciously imputing to her a want of chastity, shall be guilty of a misdemeanor of the first degree, punishable as provided in sections 775, 82, or 83. And Limbaugh's critics have pointed out that his statements were more about the issue of birth control than Sandra Fluck herself. So what do you think? I mean, can we see Rush Limbaugh get prosecuted?
Should we prosecute him? No. This is not a path that people want to go down. I think Ms. Allred in this particular instance is pointing this out just to show that the nature of the statement here. But does some liberal talk show host want to have some Wyoming statute that maybe says that a defamatory comment is a felony as opposed to a misdemeanor be used against them? I don't think we really want to go down this road. Now, civilly, I think that potentially Ms. Fluck or Ms. Fluke, she might have a case here to go after Mr. Limbaugh personally for defamatory comments.
Okay, so let's step back here and take a look at this issue. I mean, birth control has really erupted across America after President Obama introduced the Affordable Health Care Act, and his Republican opponents attacked him for that, and they said he, quote, was waging a war on religion. Where do laws on reproductive rights come from? Is it the Constitution? Is it Congress?
Well, this is an interesting thing. Conservative legal scholars would say that reproductive laws don't come from the Constitution because what they would say is that there is no right to privacy in the Constitution. There's a case called Griswold versus Connecticut that was decided back in the 50s that was a contraceptive case that said that there actually is a right to privacy in the Constitution. And it's complex in that it comes from a number of places in the Constitution, but the main places that they point to is the Due Process Clause of the 14th Amendment and also the 9th Amendment and then what's called the penumbra of rights. But this is a basic argument between liberals and conservatives as to whether there is this right of privacy. So to the extent that, yes, you do have a right to the use of contraceptives, and abortion obviously is legal in the United States, and it's based in the Constitution on the right of privacy.
Okay, and the Affordable Health Care Act, you know, 2,700 pages, it's up at the Supreme Court, and among the first mandates is to ensure that insurance companies cover, you know, contraceptives, morning after pill. Does the Affordable Health Care Act infringe on personal liberties the way that outlawing birth control would?
I think we have to be careful here. It's interesting. Look, you can always have reasonable restrictions on rights. A perfect example is, we all know that we have a First Amendment right to free speech, but you also can't yell fire in a crowded movie theater. You know, the same sort of thing here happens. There's a balancing effect that's happening here. You have, in the case of these institutions, you have institutions that are providing they're providing services to people, but the people that work for these institutions, they have rights as well, and they should have access to birth control, and they should be able to have a right to their own privacy. So there's a balancing that's going on here.
And you know, looking down the road, if a Republican does win the presidency in November, how far can the president go in limiting access to birth control?
Well, that's where things become really interesting, because there's two ways that this can go. First of all, you can legislate, or you can push legislation that in fact might be unconstitutional. But until that legislation has actually reached the Supreme Court, it can be ruled unconstitutional or constitutional. With regard specifically to birth control, the issue is not one of like condoms, for example, but it's more things like morning after pills and things of that sort, which potentially could be the type of thing that a more conservative Supreme Court could say, use as a test case to say that there is no right of privacy that goes to an egg once it's fertilized, and they extend the abortion decisions in of Roe v. Wade, or they overturn it to a certain degree.
For people that are, you know, concerned about not having access to any of those things,
if a Republican president were to appoint conservative Supreme Court justices that do not believe in a right of privacy, then in fact those access to certain contraception could actually be in jeopardy.
All right. Thank you. Thanks very much. Craig Miller from Simeone and Miller. And Maria, it's back to you.
Coming up, does the law allow employers to ask you for your Facebook password? Stay tuned and find out.